Hey everybody, it's good to see you again. I'm really excited to share a short devotional with you today on the topic of endurance. I think that right now is a time that we really need to endure because we are hitting a later stretch of our quarantine marathon. And now is not the time to rest on our laurels, spiritually speaking, and get focused on the wrong things. I remember years ago, a good friend in the church in Southern California, in Lancaster, named James, he had said to me after spending a week at preteen camp that he had had a mountaintop experience. If you've ever been to a Christian retreat or a camp of this sort, you might know what he's talking about. Imagine a week of daily worship, morning, noon, and night. Not just for yourself, but with young people. Seeing their faith be molded and shaped. Seeing young people lift up their hands in praise. Seeing young people break down sometimes even in tears as they're making important connections internally in their own lives with what they're reading in the scriptures. Seeing people come together, embracing one another in true Christian fellowship. And you just have a whole week of that removed from the world, removed from the internet or television or even work. And then you come down off that mountain. And James was telling me, man, Luke, I don't want to lose this feeling. I feel so connected to God. And he even started to tear up a little bit. He's like, I just don't want to lose that feeling. I can relate with that. Maybe you can relate with that. There's been mountaintop experiences in our lives, emotionally and spiritually, that we just don't want to come down off of. And for some of us, maybe even quarantine has been a bit of that. And at the same time, we're past Easter now by a few days, and for me, Easter was like this pinnacle I'd been working up towards, fasting through the Lent season, reading Psalms of Ascents all that week before Easter, having Good Friday worship, and then Easter was this pinnacle of worship. And honestly, these last couple of days, I haven't been having really great time with the Lord. My public worship has been great. I've been praying with brothers and sisters. I've been having family worship with my kids. But Jesus says that if you don't go into your own private closet and pray, well, then we're like the hypocrites. We're just doing it for show. I don't want that to be true of me. I imagine that it's not just a struggle I'm having, but that many of you are as well. I've talked with some men who have also been feeling that way, that this last week, for whatever reason, it's been hard to endure. So, let's get into our topic. Number one, let me just say, we have to accept that life is going to have its ups and downs. We're going to have emotional highs, and we're going to have emotional lows. We're going to have mountaintop experiences, but life can't be teen camp all the time. Life certainly can't be quarantine all the time. Things are going to go back to normal, and we have to accept that at some level. But, number two, we do need to put effort into endurance. It's not like some wind is going to blow, the Spirit is going to fill us up, and it'll be effortless. For the rest of our lives, we'll just want to walk with God. I'm sorry, brothers and sisters. One of the curses of sin is that only through toil and hard labor will we ever cultivate anything for our sustenance. The ground produces thorns and thistles. And if it's that way when we produce physical food, it's probably going to be that way when we're trying to produce spiritual food. We're trying to get that manna from heaven. We're trying to go to that spring of living water. It's not always going to be easy. Sometimes through sweat and toil, we need to endure to get that living water and get that manna from heaven. Let me transition a little bit as we get into some Bible study here to try to answer the question, why do I need to endure? Why do I need to struggle and strive? Not just the DNA or the genesis of struggle, as I was talking about the curse, but also just what's the point? Like, what am I working towards? Okay, I'm going to endure to have a quiet time. I'm going to endure to pray. I'm going to endure to share my faith. I'm going to endure to serve the poor. Like, what's the purpose? Help me sketch out the image, what I'm working for. Well, let's just be real broad and say we're working for salvation. We want to get to heaven, right? And endurance is certainly necessary for salvation. Check out with me Matthew 24 in verse 12. Did a study in this a few days ago about the fall of Jerusalem, and that was a very specific coming of the Lord or judgment of the Lord. But really, at any time in our lives where we are undergoing judgment or a coming of the Lord, such as this time of quarantine, we're going to find that these words are applicable and relevant. Matthew 24, verse 12 and 13 say, "Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved." Who's the one who will be saved? The one who stands firm to the end. We've got to endure if we want to be saved. Now, a much deeper and fuller passage I'd love to look at is in Hebrews chapter 10. Turn there with me if you will. I'm going to read from the English Standard Version because in the NIV it translates the word I want as perseverance. I'm talking about endurance, and so the ESV has it. I'm pulling back the curtain and telling you the truth of why I choose certain scriptures. It's all selfish. Here we go. Let's read in verse 32 of Hebrews chapter 10. "But recall the former days, when after you were enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with sufferings, sometimes being publicly exposed to reproach and affliction, and sometimes being partners with those so treated. For you had compassion on those in prison, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew that you yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one. Therefore do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward. For you have need of endurance." Let me say it again. Verse 36. "For you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised." Why do we have need of endurance? So that we may receive the reward that has been promised. There is a reward. There is a banquet set for us in heaven if we endure to the end. Now, the audience that the Hebrews author is writing to had at one time been on a spiritual mountaintop. They're saying, you used to give up your property, you went to prison, and if you didn't, you sympathized with those who did. You had confidence in the face of struggles. Don't lose that. Hold on to that. Endure, because he who is promised is faithful. And if you hold on, you're going to receive the reward. That's inspiring. I got to tell you, it can be hard for me to hold on to my confidence. It can be hard for me to endure. Not that I doubt the Lord, but sometimes I doubt that placing him center in my life will profit me most. And that's the truth. When we put God front and center of our lives and we worship him daily and we make him the whole essence of our existence, that's what profits us most. But I get it twisted in my head sometimes. I don't know why after Easter, but got excited about gardening. And Amanda and I, we put down some money on some new fencing for our backyard so that our dog can run freely. We are planting some tomatoes, and we got some blueberry bushes that we're cultivating. There's just all these things that profit me and I get excited about. But I wake up in the morning and my first thought, blueberries. Not God. And that's wrong. There's something wrong with my perspective. I need to endure. I need to make sure that I'm not losing what's been good about this quarantine. And that's been my absolute focus on God. He is the essence of my existence. He is my ruach, the spirit, the life breath that has turned dust into flesh. I can't lose sight of that. Don't you lose sight of it either. What profits you most is when you are close to God. Seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all things will be added unto you. Remember, worshiping the Lord profits you. It's the best thing you can do with your time. Everything else is secondary. Put him first, front and center in your life. Not just in the morning. Putting God first doesn't mean chronologically. It doesn't mean he's the first thing you do in the morning and the rest of the day is yours. No, it means you're constantly worshiping the Lord. So remember, endure, hold on to the Lord because it profits you. And some reflection questions, if you're doing this as part of a study group, or even if you're just wanting to apply this more to your own life. Number one, where in my spiritual practice do I need endurance? Ask yourself, where do I really need to endure in my spiritual practice? Number two, how will it profit me? Remember to think through how the endurance of your spiritual practice will profit you. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to say a quick prayer just to bless you, and we'll sign off. Father in heaven, thank you so much for the advent of technology and video and all this stuff that we can share some encouragement with one another. There's no greater technology, however, than your word, your revealed will through the prophets, through the apostles who have written down your word. It is a double-edged sword, sharp enough to divide soul and spirit. And it gets down to our hearts to reveal what's really there. If we have need of endurance, and we all do, help us to do it. Help us to see how it profits us to endure. Give us conviction on that, and then help us to do it. We love you and pray all this for your glory, and in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. All right, friends, that concludes it. Till next time, stay healthy and stay strong in the Lord.